Bánh ngon quá. Xin cái.
Ngon rồi.
All right. Sorry, I had to move my location again because my computer was apparently not charging where I had it plugged in. So I now have this nice curtain next to me, but you know, have to be flexible. Okay. Let me reshare. All right, and we'll get started again. I know there's a lot that we're talking about today. We're going through a lot of details, a lot of information. And again, I think, okay, great. I think the key here is really to practice. It will feel overwhelming at first. It will feel harder than it should be. I think searching is one of those things that if you haven't done it a lot in this way with this type of search, you think, I search for things all the time. I know how to Google. I understand how to do this. And then you start doing it and you realize, oh, this is hard. It's hard because sometimes you get way too many articles. Sometimes you don't get enough. You have to it's a lot of trial and error. And this is why it's good to do a systematic review with a team. You want your team to be working with you and say, okay, well, we're not getting enough articles. Can we broaden our search? Maybe we're too narrow. Maybe we don't want to just look at Northern Vietnam. Maybe we're interested in Vietnam as a whole. Maybe we're interested in all of Southeast Asia or all of Asia, the entire continent, right? Whatever it is.
Chị ơi, cái bản gốc phải nộp lên phòng tổ chức chị ạ. Tự nộp không được hộ được. Cái bản gốc cơ. Nãy là em photo nhưng mà bây giờ người ta lại yêu cầu bản gốc. Đúng rồi ạ, vâng ạ. Giữ làm mùi nhiều hơn. Giữ làm mùi nhiều hơn.
This is my search. This is what I'm going to do. This is kind of my official plan. But you're not just making up that plan sitting around a table, right? You're coming up with that plan by trying it. And once you've come up with the plan that you're convinced will work, you pre-register it, and then you just follow the plan. Then you follow the protocol and you do what you said you were going to do. But you don't, when we say pre-specified, it doesn't mean before you specified it. It means before you do the official run of everything. Okay, that's a really important takeaway. Sometimes I think people get stuck on the idea that that the protocol is supposed to be pre-specified, and then they say, "Oh, well, I don't know, you know, what's good, and I didn't know, and now I've ended up with 300,000 records, and I don't know what to do because I'm supposed to stick to my protocol." Try it first. Expect that it will be hard. Expect that you'll have to try a bunch of different things.
Recording in progress.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. I was going to try to remember that. Okay. All right, now let's move on to screening. Let's say you've really dialed in your search. You've figured out how to come up with the right amount of articles. Now we're going to talk about screening. So why is screening important in the first place? It's important because your search could have produced 100 or thousands of results, and you need a process that will efficiently screen out the studies that are clearly irrelevant, right? You only want to include studies in your review that are meeting your eligibility criteria, that are relevant to your review. What you don't want to do is do this systematic search, come up with 5,000 articles, and then write your systematic review paper where you say, well, of those 5,000, we found a bunch that were, you know, here's 300 that we found that were relevant, and we're just talking about those. It all needs to be systematic, and we'll talk about what this means. You need to say, we came up with this many in our search, and then we did this systematic screening, and it reduced and reduced and reduced until we ended up with these 300, and this is how we came up with that. So that, again, someone else can replicate it, right? So that's what we'll talk about now. So the first step in doing that is to develop a screening guide. And you really want to ask some questions so that your whole team, whoever is actually screening the articles, is doing it in the same consistent way. So when you come up with a screening guide, you want to stick to these 4 principles. You want a series of questions, right? And the questions should be clear with understandable wording. Everybody on your team should understand them similarly, right? All the screeners understand the questions in the same way. Each question is only one question. You're not saying, is this true and that true? You're just saying, is this true? And then a separate question is that true? And you want your questions to be very simple so that screeners don't have to make a lot of judgments. It's just very clear. We're going to do an exercise at the end of the morning where I'll give you a tool that gives very clear examples about this. But essentially, you want your screeners to say, okay, I'm looking at this. In the first round, you look at the titles and abstracts of everything returned by your search. And you're essentially saying, is this eligible? So your questions might be like, is this about the population of interest? Is this related to the study design? That's our eligibility criteria, our inclusion criteria. Is there something that is related to our exclusion criteria that would make us automatically screen out this study? Those are the types of questions that you want to be asking. And many studies have multiple reports. This is important to keep in mind. You want to identify, so you might have a big randomized control trial that went on for many years, and the team from that trial published, 30 papers, and maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of them are all about the same study and are all meeting your eligibility criteria. Maybe they all have slightly different reasons that they were published as separate studies, but ultimately they're going to appear multiple times in your search results, and you might screen them in. They'll meet your eligibility criteria and you'll screen them in multiple times, but they're all the same study. So you need to be clear about that and link their references and make sure that you're not counting those as 5 totally different studies that you're including in your review as if they're all brand new, right? You are counting those as one piece of information, and you need to track that. Okay. So there are many different tools that you can use for doing screenings. Some of them are like subscription based, or you might have a software that's available through your institution. But a lot of people use Zotero because it's completely free, it's open source, you can use it on Mac, Windows, Linux. And there's this nice internet plugin that makes it very easy when you find references, you can save it to your Zotero library. So a lot of people really like Zotero. And so I'll do one more demo for you momentarily that shows how, when you're searching and you're coming up with a whole bunch of articles, how you can import them and keep track of them systematically. Okay, so the first thing you want to do with Zotero is register for a free account, and then create a group that your entire team for your systematic review is part of, right? So then you're all sharing the same group. It's all syncing to all of your computers. It's connected. This is really key. So if you have used Zotero before for yourself, for your own citation management, but you haven't done it for a systematic review, I want to make sure you understand how to use Zotero in this way and create groups. So if you go to zotero.org, you'll see at the very top, there's this border where it says groups, menu item where it says groups on the top border. Go ahead and click that. And then in here, I forgot to change this, but you'll see when I do the demo that you can choose whatever name you want. I chose a different name, but I forgot to change the screenshot, sorry. But once you create a group, once you click groups, you come into this window. And the choices are to create a new group. You click that. And then it'll say, oh, okay, you want to create a new group? What's the name for your group? So you can call it the Prep in Vietnam, SRMA, right? And then the group type that you want to pick is almost always, in this case, going to be private membership. For a systematic review, that's almost always what you want, is you want a private membership, which means only the members you add to your group can view it. You have to invite them. So you're going to actually send an invitation to each of the people in your group that are screening the articles, and then they'll become members of the group. So you pick private membership and you hit to create the group. Okay. And then once you're in there, this will be the name of your group. And it'll say members settings. And then you actually click here where it says member settings. It'll change to this heading so that you know. And then at the bottom, you'll see your username because you set yourself up. You set it up yourself. Your role is owner. But then you can send invitations. So you click down here. You say, I want to send invitations. And then you put in emails to all the people that you're working with who are in your group. You send them invitations, and then when they accept the invitation, you'll see them listed here as current members. And you can change the rules if you want by updating the rules. But the important part is that you are adding everybody to the group, and then it will sync to their local copy of Zotero. So now let me show you what that. Okay, so the HMU SRMA course. Not the old South African name that was in there. Okay, so over here, this is my Zotero, my own personal Zotero on my computer. I'm not in the web anymore. I'm on the Zotero file on my computer. And over here on the right, if I didn't see this group that I had just created, then I check here, click here, which is the little sync button. And I say, I want to sync, and then this new group will appear. And so once everybody's accepted your invitation, everybody in their own local instances of Zotero, they can sync and they should see this same group, and it will look the same way, and it'll sync across everybody's step is to create the groups. That doesn't even talk about screening. You just want to have a group that is doing what you want. Okay. So now let's go into PubMed. Oh, that's not PubMed. Hold on. And you'll recall this is our search that we did. Let's look at this one that came up with the 24 articles. Okay, so I'm going into PubMed. I've already done my search. I've decided this is the best final search. Ideally, you would have more than 24 articles. I'm just doing a demo here. But let's say, okay, these are the 24 articles we think are pretty close. These are the ones we want to screen. Okay, so the first thing you do is you need to export these articles to a citation manager, right? So you click all the options. Oh, okay, I guess you just do, yeah, you can manually click each one, or you can just say send to this whole list, send to citation manager. And then I don't want all results on this page. I want all the results, all 24 of them. So I do that, I create the file, and I go back to Zotero, and I click on the group that I'm interested in, this HMU SRMA course, and I go File, Import. Oh, hold on, let me bring this over here so you can see it. And then, unless you're using Mendeley, which is different and not what I'm able to demo because I don't use Mendeley, I say I want to import from a file. And it's one of these files. That's what I downloaded from PubMed. You hit next, and it'll say, okay, what's the file? And so it's in my downloads folder. It's PubMed 4 and 5 set, right? That's what I exported. So I click that one, and then it brings me to the new screen. And both of these settings are actually very important. You want to keep this box checked to create a new collection, and I'll show you why in a moment. And you want to actually copy the files to the Zotero storage folder. You don't just want to link them in the original location because those can't be synced, and you want them to sync across your whole group. So you leave this checked and you say you want to copy the files and you hit next. Now we know there were 24 articles that were in my search that I exported from PubMed, and I double check, okay, good, it's 24 articles that were imported. That seems like it worked, and I hit finish. Now I have a new set here, a new collection. It's called in Zotero. I have a new collection, and it has these 24 articles in it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this collection. If you right click, I'm using a PC, it might be slightly different in a Mac, but you right click or however you bring up the sub menu and click rename collection. And what I'm going to do is rename it to PubMed results. And then in parentheses, I'm going to write 24. And I'll show you why later. This will become clear. But for now, just trust me. I know that when I exported this and I imported it into Zotero, there were 24 records. And I'll hit enter. So now these are all in here. Okay. Hoping you can still hear me fine. Okay, so now we have PubMed results 24. So the reason we do this is because this helps you keep track of how many records you're adding just from PubMed. It's very common that when you're doing a systematic review, you won't just search one database. If you remember those examples I showed you right before the break, many times people are searching in multiple databases and then they're removing the duplicates. And so you want to search across multiple databases and then add them all into Zotero, which will remove the duplicates. And so I'm going to demo that now just so you understand. But the reason that you, in this main group, you see all of the articles. This is sort of the collective pot of all of the articles. But now I have this way to view this subset, this collection that I know came from PubMed. And there were 24 of them when I started, before I removed any duplicates. That's important because you need that number later when you report what you did during screening. Okay, so now you start with that. Now you want to repeat that for every database that you're going to search. Let me just check this chat quickly. For the software question about if you use Mendeley and your colleagues use Zotero, I don't actually know that answer, whether the software is compatible. I know sometimes there is the way to import or export. It's certainly possible, but I can't tell you for sure. And my recommendation is that for this type of complex process, you actually try to all be in the same system that's syncing like this, whether you use Zotero or a different one, so that everybody's looking at the same thing. But that's not to say it can't be done with the thing that you're most comfortable with. I am an EndNote user myself. That's what I learned. And so I actually feel a bit out of my element when I use Zotero. But when I do systematic reviews, I always use Zotero because to me, it's the best one for sharing in this way. Not to say it's the only option. Okay. Now I'm going to do a demo of, just for the purpose of showing you how you remove duplicates and how this works. I'm going to do the similar search we just did in PubMed, but I'm going to do it in a different database. And I'm actually going to use Embase, which is one I'm familiar with. It may not, to be honest, it may not be the most perfect example for you all because a lot of people don't have access to Embase because it's a subscription only thing. And I get it through UC Berkeley. That's where I use it, but I'm not sure if you have access through HMU. It's okay if you don't use Embase. I'm just using it as an example of a second database. And if you use PsycInfo or something else, you can do very similar to what I'm demonstrating with Embase. This isn't about teaching you Embase. It's to show you, if you search elsewhere, how do you compare the two within Zotero, okay? Excuse me, hold on. Oh, okay. All right, so I'm going to, actually what I'm going to do is go back, start in PubMed, and I'm going to go ahead and get this query that I just exported. when I click this little arrow, it will give me all the final text of the search that was used here. So my shorthand was number 4 and number 5, right? That's all my brain needed to know. But if I want, I can go in here and I can actually grab all of this text. And I'll show you why I'm going to do that, because many search tools have something similar. I'm going to make a copy of it. And then when I go to Embase, which looks like this, Embase has a tool, and again, many different databases have a similar tool, or you can use that polyglot tool, which we'll add to the website. But I can go to this query translator, because the people at Embase know that a lot of people just use PubMed. And so I can add the PubMed query. I can paste in what I just got from PubMed, and I can say, please translate it. And then it will show me what this syntax looks like in Embase. So I don't need to know how to write all that stuff in Embase. I know how to write it in PubMed, and then it'll translate it for me. And I can copy that query and I can use it. Or in this case, I can just press the button to go to advanced search. Otherwise, I could copy the query and I could click the advanced button and go to the advanced search. Okay, so I'm going to go to the advanced search. And then it copied the query for me, or obviously I could have pasted it myself. It removed, oh, I should have showed you this. Let me go back to the query translator. Oh, interesting. Well, the version that I copied, I guess I forgot to copy the version that had the date conversion. So the way PubMed does the date conversion, Embase does not understand that. It flags it in red and it says like this, we can't translate this. This doesn't work. So I'm just going to manually, I would have removed it, but it wasn't in here because I guess I didn't copy the right thing. But when I go back to advanced and I see it in here, I also want to add that same 10-year limit, right? So I'm going to, in this case, in Embase, I just hit date and I say my publication years are 2015 to 2025, the last 10 years. And now I'm going to do this search, which is the translated PubMed search, the same exact search as PubMed with these same date limits, which I also used in PubMed. I just forgot to carry over. And then I'm going to hit search. Okay, so the reason you look in multiple databases is because different databases index different articles. You find different things. So PubMed returned 24 articles from that search, but Embase is actually returning 62 articles. Now I know that probably up to 24 of those articles are going to be duplicates, right? They're going to appear in both PubMed and Embase, but obviously there are some in Embase that didn't appear in PubMed. So by searching in multiple places, I'm casting the widest net. I'm finding as many articles as possible. Okay, so now I'm in Embase and I want to bring this into Zotero and I want to be able to compare, right? I want to say, I did this search in PubMed and I found 24 articles. I did this search in Embase and I found 62 articles. Then I removed duplicates. I ended up with a certain number of articles and then we screened them, right? So that's essentially what we want to do. So let's see. I've got these 62 results. One thing you just need to know for Embase is I want to select the number of items. I want all 62 items, not just, the first 500 or something like that. I select 62 items and I hit export and I want to export RIS format. You could pick different things, but this one works fine for Zotero. And I hit export. Yes, I would like to download it. Okay, so this is downloading a different kind of file, but it still works fine for Zotero. So this one is called records1.ris. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to go back to Zotero and basically do exactly the same thing I did before. I'm going to be in this main group. I'll do file, import, a file. This time it's an RIS file. Hit next. I'm going to pick records1.ris. I do want it to be in a new collection, and I want to copy the files into the Zotero storage folder. Hit import. And this time it should be 62 articles, right? Great. 62 items were imported. Perfect. So I hit finish. And then again, what I want to do is go here, rename the collection. And this time I'm going to call it Embase results 62. Okay, so now I have the 24 articles from PubMed and I have the 62 articles from Embase. And when I click on the main library, it should be good. It's 86 items, right? It's the 62 that were added from Embase and the 24 that were added from PubMed, and they're just all in the pot together. I can see all of them. But what I want to do now is say, so if I were doing a third database, I would add the third one, right? And I'm keeping track of how many from the same search I'm getting from the different databases, and I'm keeping them all different here with these collections. Just gonna check the chat. I have not had the same issue with Embase before I show you the duplicates. Let me just, the trick is this drop down. So the default for Embase is, I think, 500, or it's a certain number. I only have 62, so I can't show you. But the trick is that when you go to export, you want to pick how many that you would be exporting. And you should be able to pick many thousands and then hit export. But if you don't change this drop down, the default will give you the limit for the import. So this should solve it. But I'm also not an Embase expert. So hopefully if you continue to have problems, hopefully, I mean, I'd be happy to try to troubleshoot it with you, but hopefully you have a reference librarian at HMU or elsewhere who could help you with it. Because you should be able to export many at a time. Okay. So now we're going back to Zotero. We've gone through the step of importing all of the articles that we got from all of the databases we searched, right? We've got like the whole universe of all the articles that we think we might include in our review, and we want to start screening. So then the first thing you do is you go in Zotero to this duplicate items group collection, essentially, which is there by default. And you can see there are a lot of duplicates, right? This article was in both PubMed and Embase. This article was in both. All of the articles that are in here were in both. And so there's a couple ways that you can deal with that. One is that you can click on them and you can double check that they're the same. You can, look at what was different between them. Okay, you're convinced they're the same. You hit merge two items and then they become a single item in the main. They're merged. You understand what merges. They're merged. Let's do it here. We're going to merge. Now this one, it only looks like one here, but it must be somewhere else. Oh, interesting. So it thinks these are the same. So then I would look and I would say preferences and willingness to use pre-exposure prophylaxis. Oh, this looks very different. I don't know why it thinks it's the same, but I'm not going to merge those, right? You can go through and sort of manually make this choice. That works when you have, 20 duplicates or 20 sets of duplicates. If you have hundreds or thousands of duplicates, doing it manually could take a very long time. The other option is that there is a plugin. So Zotero only has this kind of slow manual way to do it, but there's a plugin that someone has built that allows you to just press a button and it will remove all of the duplicates all at once. It gives you a little less control than if you do it manually the way I was just demonstrating, but it's certainly faster and sometimes that's more reasonable. On the course website, we have the link to the GitHub page where you can download that plugin. And I was planning on demoing it for you today, but for some reason I realized just before the course that there's something wrong with my plugin and it's not working. And then I tried to quickly download it during the break and I couldn't figure it out. So I can't demo it right now, but I will look at it and maybe can show you at the start of the class tomorrow. But just so that you know, it's there, you can download it and it could make your life easier if you're talking about, several thousands of duplicates that you have to go through. And I see the comment in the chat, but I'm going to keep going with this demo, and then I will answer that for sure. Okay, so you go through. I'm not going to do every single one now because in the interest of time, I'm just going to kind of show you. But you go through and your next step is to remove all the duplicates. You want to figure out what your duplicates are and come up with a set of unique articles. Once you've removed all the duplicates, when you click on this main group collection, you should see the total number of articles that are available after you removed all of the duplicates, right? And that number is also important to know for your reporting. When you say, like, we looked in PubMed and we found 24 articles. We looked in Embase and we found 62 articles. Then we removed duplicates and we ended up with some number of articles. Let's say it's 45. I didn't go through and do it, so I don't know. But you can see this number was 86. I removed a handful of duplicates. Now it's 82. Once you've removed all the duplicates, you get a final number, right? And then you know what that number is. What you can actually do is click and say, I want to create a new collection. And then you want to call that collection screening folder. And you want to put whatever the number is once you've removed all the duplicates, right? So let's say it's 35 articles, or what we're left with across all the databases that we that we searched. And once we removed all the duplicates, we were left with 35 articles. You would do that. You create the collection. It's empty when you create it, but then you can go to this main place. You can select all of the items, let's say it's 35, and you can drag them into the screening folder. It doesn't remove them from the main pot, that never changes. But now in the screening folder, you would only have the 35 articles that you're screening. And then this is the folder that everybody in your group uses to screen the articles, right? Everybody knows these are the ones that we're going to screen. You can actually create sub collections where I could say these are the 10 articles. Let me show you. So let's say we'll call this Shelley screening, and that's 10. These are the 10 articles that Shelley will screen. Okay, hopefully, I think you should still be able to hear me fine. These are the 10 articles that Shelley will screen, and you can actually pick, the 10 Shelley will drag them in here. And then let's say I'm creating a new sub collection that's called Sada screening. And she's going to also take 10. And then I pick, okay, these are the 10 that Sada is going to screen, and I drag those into hers, right? And this is syncing to everybody's computer within Zotero. So then when Sada goes in, she knows she's going to look just at these, and Shelley's going to look just at these, which are different. And these are the articles we're going to screen, right? And then you can do the same thing. You can create a new collection that's called full text. And then the full text folder is all the articles that were screened in by screening the titles and abstracts. You were left with 22 articles that you think you officially want to screen in. You call it full text, and you create just the articles that screened in. And then you have a full text folder with the number that's whatever I just said, 21 articles. And the way that you stay organized in something like Zotero makes it very easy later when you go to look up the articles and you go to report it out and say, we did our review. These are all the places we searched. This is how much we found. It's what's called the figure one, which we'll talk about tomorrow. But you've probably seen, if you've ever read a systematic review, it looks the same way. It's in the Prisma guidelines. And it says, these are all the places we searched, what we found, and then we screened, and then we looked at the full text, and then we came up with this many, and then this is what was included in the review. If you structure the way that you include it in your system here, then you can keep track of all that, and it becomes very easy later. Okay. So I know that's kind of a lot, but I think that this is a really useful and free tool if you don't have another system. Again, you don't have to use this system, but it's a easy way that you can do it for free with your whole team. Now I see this question about should references managers like Zotero and Mendeley be used in conjunction with things like Covidence or Rayon? I think that they don't need to. These like Covidence or Rayon, they're subscription services where you get a login and there's software that's meant for doing systematic reviews and keeping everything organized. For people who are doing a lot of systematic reviews or who are doing a massive review with many thousands of articles that are going to be used in the future, you may want to, it may be worth it to invest in one of those softwares. If you're doing a single systematic review, say for a dissertation or for one study that you're working on, and you think you'll do one or two in your career, and that's pretty much what you will do, this is probably fine, especially if you're not talking about using, screening 30,000 articles. I have always just used a reference manager like this with my teams, and it's been perfectly fine to do that. So it just depends what you have access to, what you're comfortable with. If you have someone with it and you're able to access the subscription through your institution, then great. It's a great tool, but it's not necessary to use. It's a good question though. And I see that Sara posted the link to this polyglot tool. I'll also add it to the website. But the polyglot tool website here is a translator between different databases. So like I showed with the PubMed query going into the Embase language, Polyglot will help you take one query language and change it to the query language for a different database. Great. Okay, and then the last thing, I think I won't demo it here because I'm not sure it's super easy, is that you can actually add, Zotero will pull in the full text in some ways, but you can also add it manually. I think it's this one. You can click, like when you get to the full text stage, when you have a full text folder, you can click on whatever you want to add. Let's say somebody's downloaded the PDF of the file. You can click here and say add file or attach file, and you can add the PDF right in here so that when I go to Shelley's screening, there's the PDF of the full text is linked to every single thing in here so that I can just go right in. I don't have to go somewhere else, click on a link, go to a website, look for the full text. Someone's role can be to keep all this organized, and they're adding the full text right into all of these so that my job is to go to my screening folder and screen. So hopefully that was helpful. I know it was, again, a lot of information, but between the recording of this, which we will post on the website, and the fact that you have the slides, I'm hoping that it's something you can play around with your team and find that it's helpful. The last thing I want to say about Zotero is that you can actually install it as a plugin in your computer. You can install it so that it displays as a tab in Microsoft Word, which makes it easy when you're actually writing your paper later. You'll see Zotero. You can add and edit your citations, use that as you go in your article. You're probably familiar with this. All the reference managers use something like that. And then if you're using Zotero for the first time in Word, it will ask you to choose your citation style. So you can decide, you can always change it when you're working for a new journal that uses a different style, but you can use your favorite. And you can choose whether you want your citations as footnotes, which is more common for legal documents, and certain journals use it, or endnotes, which is more common for a lot of public health journals. And then it will remember this every time you use Zotero. Once you've set it up, you can always go in and manually change it, but it'll ask you to do that to begin with. So this is essentially what you are trying to do from your screening, right? You're saying, we searched all these databases and we screened in, or we went through the screening and we ended up with, in this case, this is just an example article, we ended up with 1,752 titles and abstracts that we had screened in that we thought were eligible. Then the team went and sorry, what they're actually doing, this is, I explained this wrong because I think it's not written very clearly. This is showing that from all of the searches, they came up with 1,752 articles, which they then screened, right? So this is like records returned in the search is what I think it should say. Then they screened the titles and abstracts of those 1,752 articles. And when they did that, they excluded 1,694 articles. And they excluded them for all these different reasons, right? Which if you read the whole article, these things would make sense. I can't tell you what T2DM means, but presumably in the article, it would be clear. And actually what you often want to do is then specify, this was 120 articles. This was 345 articles. This was, we'll talk about this more tomorrow. This was 400 articles. So you're telling people how many were screened out in each of these categories. But these are the reasons that they excluded almost all the studies. Then they were left with 58 articles that they thought were probably eligible. They downloaded the full text for those 58, and then the team went through and looked at the full text to assess for eligibility and make sure that it made sense, right? So that's the kind of thing that you're trying to do with your screening. Right, here's another example of, they started with, after they removed duplicates, they had 1,201 unique titles. Now, in this case, this article, they actually they looked first, they did 3 rounds, which is pretty rare. Usually people do titles and abstracts together. In this case, they started with the titles and they said, we're going to exclude articles just based on the title. And of the 521 they excluded, they could tell right from the title that 333 were not in South Africa, which is what they were interested in. 18 of them were not human participants, so they weren't interested, right? They told you the numbers. Then they were down to 680. Those were the abstracts they looked at in the second round. And when they looked at those 680 abstracts, they excluded another 512. And these are all the reasons that they excluded those. They were left with 168. And that's the ones where it takes a lot longer. That's why you have these rounds, to very quickly get rid of all the ones that are not good. All those go away, and then you're left with the full text, which is a lot more labor intensive to go through and screen. Okay, we're almost done for the day. What I want, before we go to a practice exercise, I just want to show you one thing on the course website, because this might not be very clear to you. So in a moment, we're going to look at the screening studies worksheet together. But down at the bottom of day 2 are these different tools. You absolutely do not need to use these tools, but these are from that smoking cessation Appalachian systematic review that I did, that I was showing you before. These are the tools we used to actually do this. And before, when we've tried this, people have said it's actually really helpful to see some examples of how you might set this up. So I just want to show you particularly this one. I got rid of it. Okay. This screening tool. Got 1 second to open. Obviously, you can download this for yourself. This is an example. It's filled out, but it's meant so that you can adapt this for yourself if you'd like to. So the idea with this tool is that someone's job was to set up, right? If you recall in Zotero, let me pull it up. In Zotero, I said, here's the Shelley screening articles. Here's the 10 that Shelley's going to screen, right? You could have someone whose role it is on the team to then go in here and actually copy the abstract and put it into a screening tool like this. So Each article gets a unique ID. You have the title and you have the abstract, right? That's in the first round. That's what you want to screen, the title and the abstract. So somebody creates a spreadsheet that just pastes them in here. And then this is set up where I screen it and then I either type a yes, which turns it green, right? If you know a little bit about Excel and how to format the cells, when I say yes, it turns it green. When I say no, it turns it gray. If I change it to yes, it'll turn green. And then if I say no, I'm screening this out. I'm excluding this study. I don't think it's relevant. There's a drop down here where I'm able to say why, because it's not the right study design. It's not an RCT. It's not the right geography. It doesn't have an outcome. That's one of the ones we're looking at. It's not the intervention that we wanted, right? And those choices appear here, and that feeds this drop down. And so I can just go through very quickly and look at my studies. I don't have to click anywhere else. I just go here and I say, okay, I'm looking at this title. I'm looking at this abstract. Yes or no. If it's a yes, fine. If it's a no, I say why. And then maybe I turn in my completed spreadsheet to the person who's organizing things. And then that person knows, okay, these are the ones that Shelley screened in. Those are the ones that go in the full text. Going back to Zotero, if I create a collection called full text, those are the ones I want to copy from Shelley's list of screening. Those are the ones I drag into the one called full text. And then those are the ones we attach the full text to. And then I go in there and I look at the full text, right? So every team decides different tools that they want. It depends what everyone's skill sets are and who likes Excel versus who doesn't. There are all sorts of tools, but in case it's useful for you to just see examples of tools we used and how we used them, this is here for you and it's editable. You're able to, delete all of the titles and change the exclusion choices and do whatever you want to do. But I just wanted you to know that there were extra tools on the website that might help you in your process of organizing. There's no right way to do it. The most important thing is that your team has a plan, that you say, okay, we know, let me go back to this. We know that we're going to search a bunch of databases and we need to keep track of how many we got in each database through our search. Then we need a way to remove duplicates, often through whatever citation manager we want to use. We can do that. We remove all the duplicates. We need to know what that number is. Then we need everybody to screen the titles and abstracts. We're going to divvy them up in some way. Everybody will screen them according to our very clear, pre-specified inclusion and exclusion criteria that's in our protocol. We're going to keep track of all the ones that were excluded, how many were excluded, why were they excluded, so that we can include this kind of information. Then we know these are all the full texts that we want. Let's attach all the full text. Let's divvy those up among the team. Now we have all the full text that we're sure that we want to include in our systematic review. And again, if we're screening them out, why are we screening them out? Just like you see here. And then at the end of this process, when you're done with the screening, what you end up with is a set of articles that are included in your review. You end up with, of this 168 full texts, maybe it's 50, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 120, right? It could be any number, but that then is your final number of final articles that have met all your inclusion criteria. When you followed your protocol, those are the articles that you then have to analyze and write up in your systematic review report, which we'll talk about tomorrow. But this process takes a long time, right? It's important to be systematic. It's important to be very organized. So you want to know who on your team is that person who's a very organized person who will keep track of all this, make sure everybody knows what their assignments are. And it just takes a while, which is why, again, once you've registered your study, your systematic review in Prospero, if it takes a while for it to get approved, that's okay, because this will take you a while. And this is what you're going to do. You're not going to finish that this week. The goal this week is to make sure you really understand this and get started on it, so that between now and December, when Sada and I come to Vietnam, you've done this, you've gotten through this, and you're clear. Okay, we're almost to the end of our time for today, but what I wanted to do for the last 10 or 15 minutes or so is give you one exercise to practice, which is on the course website. Sorry, my little screen sharing thing is in my way. Right here, the one with the 2 stars is called Screening Studies Worksheet. Hopefully it works for you, but I know yesterday we had some download problems. So if you can't download it, put it in the chat or let us know, and we'll make sure we just drop the file in the chat. But I'll show you what it looks like quickly, just to orient you to what I'm asking you to try to do. Oh, what is happening? YouTube. We don't need YouTube. Okay, wow. I just got rid of the website. Hold on. It doesn't matter. I'm going to show you this when you download the file. Now, here's an example of, remember towards the beginning, right after the break, I said you want to come up with these screening questions, right? And so here's an example of where our team said, okay, what are our screening questions? And it was a little flow chart. So this is what I want you to practice, is use this tool. So you start here, and there's, on the subsequent pages, we've pasted the citation and the abstract, and I guess the title is there, and then the abstract, the title is up here. So what I want you to do is follow this and try to decide, do you think you would screen this article in or out, right? So does the citation indicate publication on or after 2010? That's the first question. If it's a yes, then you move on. If it's a no, nope, you screen it out, you're done. If it's a yes, you go to the next one. Does the title or abstract indicate that a systematic review or meta-analysis was conducted? If it's a yes, we're not interested. Stop screening the article. If it's a no, then we go to the next question, right? And so try following. You can create this kind of thing for your own screening, your own articles. The purpose of this exercise right now, just try taking 10 minutes. There's 4 articles here, and use the question. If you get to the bottom, yes, include this article. Here's the first one. You have title, abstract. At the bottom, would you say yes? Would you say no? Should this article be included? And I'd like you to try that for.
Recording in progress.
through all 6. That's completely fine. We'll just talk about it in 3 minutes. Okay, let's go ahead and talk through what answers you got. And again, if you didn't finish, don't stress about it. This is meant to just be a useful tool to try to bring it to real life and have you practice, but also to give you an example of how you might design a kind of flow chart for your own team, for your own screening questions. So you can adapt something like this for your own team if you want in the future. Okay, so let's just go through the different articles. So number 1, would you say that was included or excluded? And why would it be excluded? Right? Why would it be excluded? What was the reason? Like, where did you get kicked out on that flow chart? Right? It was a systematic review. So question 2 was a yes. That led you to stop screening. It wasn't eligible. So you take it out. Great. All right. Hopefully this is making sense, how you use a tool like this and what you're trying to do here. How about number 2? Was that included or excluded? And if it was excluded, why? Exactly. Excluded because of the publication year. It was published in 2006. So question number 1 was a no. You stop screening. How about 3? Is 3 included or excluded? Included. Right. Very good. Great. You got all the way to the bottom. It was included. How about 4? And if included also. Perfect. If you didn't get through all of these, you can at least take a note of what the answers are, and then you can check your own learning later and compare for yourself. Would you have gotten the same answer? So let's do the last 2 now. How about 5? exactly. So 5 was excluded because it was published in 2008. So question 1 was no, which would mean that you stopped screening. But if the publication year had been within the eligibility, it was also a systematic review. So question 2 would have been yes, and you would have also stopped screening, right? But because the publication year was out of range, you don't even have to look at whether it's a systematic review. You don't have to go through all the questions. You just go in order and stop when you stop, right? Okay. And then last one, how about publication 6? Was that included or excluded? Not included, correct. So it's excluded because why? Not a randomized control trial, right? So that one you got all the way down to question 4 in the flow chart, and then it's not a randomized control trial. We're not interested in looking at it in our review. We stop screening, it's excluded. So hopefully this was just a little demonstration to show you what you're doing when you're going through and screening. So with your team, you need to figure out what are your screening questions, make it very clear, very easy for how you're doing the screening. You need to be organized, decide who's screening which articles. Very often what you'll do in big fancy systematic reviews is have multiple people screen. So every article will be screened by 2 people, and then you're actually comparing whether everybody got the same results in their screening, and you're reporting that. In smaller systematic reviews, or sort of the first time people are doing that, sometimes there's so much work anyway that everyone just divides it up and each study is screened once. But sometimes the ideal way to do it is to have studies screened by 2 different people. And then you use your flowchart and you do exactly what we did for these 6, but you do it for however many your search returned that you're screening. So you can see I gave you a little less than 10 minutes. You did 6 of them in that time. So you can see if you had thousands to screen, why it takes a long time. But you're not spending 10 minutes on each article. You might do that once you have the full text, but that's why you want to go through first and just quickly screen titles and abstracts. Okay, well, it's 11:30 exactly, which is what we were going for today. So I know that was a lot of information today. It was really packed in, but hopefully it's good resource, something you can go back to and practice with your teams. I just want to say quickly in closing that someone asked a good question. I see a bunch of hearts, so hopefully you already saw it, but someone asked a good question about ending up with too small full texts in the chat, and that I answered it in the chat. But we'll also talk tomorrow about what to do when you're not able to access a lot of articles that are behind paywalls and what you do. I'll give you, I won't solve all those problems, but I will give you a few tips and tricks tomorrow. So that is coming. Thank you so much. We can stay on for a bit if there are more questions, or we're happy to get ready for bed. If we've covered all the questions. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning, if nothing else. Thank you. I saw that hand raised. If you do have a question, it's fine to go ahead and ask.
Okay. Thank you, Shelly.
Okay. Thank you. I think we're good.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow morning.
See you tomorrow.
Recording stopped.